I'm starting to work on the master cylinder here, and I don't know if I shot any videos before, but this was pretty bad inside and was able to clean it out. I soaked some brake clean in there. I still have to do some cleaning out around the edges here, but it looks like it's going to clean up okay, at least the housing. I was able to get the clip out and work the diaphragm out. So got that piece out. So I'm going to do some cleaning up on this. I don't know how much of this I'm going to shoot video on, but it's going to be a long process and trying to get some things done. So sometimes I won't be able to shoot video, but maybe I'll fill you in on where I'm at and what's going on. But I wanted to make sure I could get the parts out of here before I ordered a rebuild kit for this one. So now we're going to at least try to clean it up and get it looking a lot better, and probably paint the outside and everything. But I just wanted to make sure first we could get the parts out. I want to look down the bore and see how messed up that is, if it's even going to be reusable. So I'm gonna go ahead and clean this thing up. All right guys, kind of jumping around a little bit on these videos, so I may have showed you this already or may have not. Ran the master cylinder through the ultrasonic several times and then cleaned it up by hand. I don't know if you can see in there. This thing cleaned up really good. The porthole there is super clean, which I was shocked, but got everything cleaned up. So I'm going to continue to clean this up a little bit, get ready to paint it. I'm going to just pretty spray paint it like a satin black. That's probably what I'm going to do with most of the controls and things, is go with the satin black. I'm going to order a rebuild kit for this. I want to keep the original cap. I think it looks kind of cool, just kind of weathered a little bit. Even though I'm going to paint this, I want to keep some of the, some of the original look to the bike as well. Like this worn kind of cap I kind of like for some reason. So I'm just going to keep that the way it is. And I'm going to get ready to prep this up, get ready to paint. I'm going to try to paint some things, order a rebuild kit, and try to get some things ready to go back on the frame once it warms up a little bit, where I can paint the frame. So let's keep cleaning up. All right guys, so I went ahead and painted the master cylinder. I used roll bar paint for it. You can see looks a lot better. I wasn't going to use a real glossy finish, but I found this roll bar paint, thought I'd try it out. Kind of like the way it came out. So here's the bottom part of the clamp. Happy with the way it came out. I'm going to order the parts to rebuild it. So kind of got all the parts to it set aside back here. Here's the roll bar paint I use. It's Rust-Oleum roll bar paint. Excuse the mess here. It just seems like when you're working on a project like this, you get everything out and working on it. And I'm working on like 3 projects at the same time. So we're going to try to keep all this stuff bagged up and separate for now. I am... All right, guys, you can see this okay. I'm starting to rebuild the master cylinder. And here's the new one that came in the little kit, which, as you can see, is different from this one. So the seal on the back of this old one is very pliable and looks really good. The only problem is I don't remember which way it came off. I'm thinking it came off that way. And then you have this little piece that Nope, I'm wrong. Let me take this off. It has this little washer that goes in here first, and clean it off a little bit, because I think I'm going to reuse part of the old one along with that piston, because I don't know if that other piston will work. and I don't really want to take a chance of having brake fluid running all over new paint. But what I'm going to do is use the center seal that came with the kit. So apparently they're saying in the book that this washer is beveled a little bit, but it looks perfectly flat to me. So that goes in there. And then the seal goes on. But like I said, I can't remember which way I took it off. I think it was that way. Then this plastic piece goes in there. And then this little clip goes on the end. So I'm going to clean this little clip off a little bit. I forgot to clean it. So going to clip that back in. All right. So now we have to get the new seal right here over top of this one. And this seal is really hard. And I'm trying to use the grease that they gave me with it. So I'm going to try to work with this seal, see if we can get it on. I will be right back. I got the new seal on. I just had to work it up on there with a little pick. So that's on. So now the spring will go right here. Clean the spring up. So this all can go in. I'm going to go ahead and drop the spring in. All right, the spring should go there. I'm going to lube this up. They gave you a lot of this lubricating stuff. I've never used this kind of grease before, but it did help putting this one seal on it. Helped it slide right on. So we'll try it up here on these seals. I don't want to go too heavy with it. Sticky stuff though. All right. All right. I'm going to have to clean my hands off here real quick. Set this on the clean part. All right. So we've got the spring in there. So now let's see if we can work the piston in without it folding up. And I'm gonna have to do this under some light. Unfortunately, I don't have a lot of light right here where I'm at. So I am going to, actually that first part kind of wiggled it. Feels like the first part fell down in there. All right, so let's see if we can work it down to the second part, second seal. And that's where we're at now. So I'm going to have to get under some light and make sure I work this seal down in there all the way and not have it flip up. So like the seal will go in this way. So we want to make sure the seal doesn't roll up as we're getting it inside the housing where it goes. And so I'm going to do that under some light. Don't know if you can see in there. Finally have the clip in. If you have a pair of these, throw them away. And if you have a cheap pair of these, throw them away. Because you're going to be very frustrated. I was able to get it kind of started with these awful pliers. But then I had to go in with a pick and another pick and kind of wiggle it back and forth to get the clip to fall all the way down into the place where it needs to go. So now we've got to put this one on. So I'm going to try to work it in here. let's see, I'm gonna have to put probably a little bit of that grease on there to get this thing to cooperate, but we need to get it on and get this down into place around it, around the pin. It has a little groove like this that it sits down into, so we got to work that in. So I'm going to try to work on that next. I'll probably have to turn the camera off because what I'll have to say doing this will probably not be able to go on YouTube. So let me work on this. All right, so we got the boot back on it, or the new boot on it. So now we're going to get ready to put this on the bike here in a little bit. I probably won't, I don't know if I'll do it today, but it's ready to go. So now we just need to put the handle back on, clean all these tools up I have laying here, put the handle, that back on, that on, throw away this other stuff, and they'll be ready to go on the bike. All right, guys, so jumping around a little bit with this build here to kind of get started. Today's supposed to be a pretty nice day, so I'm going to try to prep the rest of this frame to get it painted. I also got some other parts out that I'm going to clean up. These are all parts that need to be painted also. What I'm trying to do is get the frame painted, and so that way I can have the frame done, and just as I get parts painted, hopefully I can start installing them back on the frame so I don't have them sitting around like this to get knocked around and beat up and paint knocked off of them. These parts here are the parts that I painted with the roll bar paint. I think they look pretty good, came out pretty nice. Got the motor here that I was looking at to try to decide which motor I'm gonna build, but so I just want to get the frame done. So if I can get the frame painted today, let it cure out for a couple days, then I can start putting parts back on it and get things ready to start being installed. So that's the game plan. So I'm going to get this out, start cleaning things up. I probably won't take a lot of video during this because it's just the work of cleaning things to get it ready for paint. So we'll be back. All right, one thing that's pretty cool about these old bikes is that's almost all the electronics that are on the bike. So I'm going to take this apart so I can do this battery box as well while I've got everything else apart. And might as well make it look nice too. So we're going to just pop these parts off. I'm kind of taking this video just to also remember how this goes back together, which direction and things like that may be off for a little bit of time, and you're doing so much you just kind of forget where parts go. So it's a good way to document it. All right, guys, so I've got my parts hung up here on a part of an old portable garage that I don't use anymore and was getting ready to throw away, but I was like, hey, this would be perfect for hanging parts on. So I'm going to get ready to paint these parts, and I'll show you what paint I'm using here. All right, so I'm using this Eastwood Classic Black Satin underbody paint. Now this paint says that it's already thinned, and man, it is super thin. So I think it'll spray okay. We're going to put some in this super expensive paint gun that I have. Now this is a really cheap Harbor Freight paint gun, but I've used it once before on a project and was impressed at how well this little paint gun painted. It's much easier, and I figure if this paint is too hard and hardens up and ruins a paint gun, I'd rather ruin a $6 paint gun than my couple $100 paint gun. So I'm going to use this cheap paint gun to paint the frame, and I'm going to just use this paint straight up, and we'll see how it does. All right, guys, so I've got my frame painted. I hope you can tell in the pictures it came out pretty good. The chassis paint from Eastwood did a pretty good job. I'd like for it to have been just a tad bit more shiny than this, but it's all right. I didn't want it glossy, but didn't really want it flat, so it's kind of an in between. Came out all right, satin color, but the only thing I noticed is in some places, I tried to lay on the coats the same amount, but in some places it got really shiny looking, and other places it's pretty flat. But I think it'll be okay. So we're going to go ahead and start putting the parts back together on this. I'm going to just go through the stuff that I painted and just start putting it on. And I'm sure there's going to be things I run across along the way that still need to be cleaned up or painted to go on the frame. So we're just going to start getting it done. All right, so I've got all the steering stem parts cleaned up, ready to go back in. I think I'm going to put those in first and get that together. Then we'll just keep working, figure out what we're going to do next. All right, guys, so I have my ball bearings all greased up on the bottom of the stem, and then I got the bearings all greased up on the top of the stem. I've shoved grease all up in here on the lower part of the race, so we're going to slide the stem up on it, put the other race down on top of these bearings right here. I'm going to put some grease around that, and then we've got the dust cover that goes on and the locking nut. And then we'll put the top part of the triple tree on with the acorn nut and washer there as well. So we're going to get ready to set this all in there and get it all back together. All right, guys, so I've got this part of the steering stem together. I don't have this tightened completely down and torqued or anything like that. I just have it on here right now because I still have to get the forks and everything on, and then we'll line everything up and then crank it down. But moves nice and smooth from lock to lock. So happy with this so far. I purposely kind of went with different color paint or different type of paint. I don't know if you can tell. I used roll bar paint on the top part of the triple tree, then chassis paint on the frame. I wanted this to stand out a little bit glossier, if you want to say, and have a little bit of protection. That's why I went with the roll bar paint. I thought maybe it had a little bit more protectant to the sun than the chassis paint possibly would. So it looks a little different, and I wanted it that way. I wanted it to kind of stand out, the controls and the triple tree compared to the frame. It's just the way I wanted it. So we're going to move on. We've got that part on, and we're going to move on down and get started on another part, which I'm not sure what we're going to do yet. We might do the battery box and go ahead and put that back in, put that back together and back in the frame, and keep moving along here. All right, I went ahead and cleaned up the steering stabilizer also, got that put on. So we've got that back in place as well. It's the steering stem. I think we're done with that for right now. Now we're going to move on to, I believe, the battery box we're going to do next. All right, so I just got the battery box snapped down in there now. So now we're going to put the rear axle on, the rear swing arm on. And so we put the rear footrest on the axle here, and we're going to slide this through, and then the other footrest goes on the other side. Now the problem is I just painted the other footrest, so we might have to wait for it to dry a little bit before we put it back together, but we're going to go ahead and try to see if we can get this all slammed on here. All right, so here's my shocks. I'm going to see if these will clean up any. I don't want to paint them black. I hate when people take and just paint things black because they can't get them looking decent, but see if we can get these cleaned up some. All right, I hit these on the wire wheel. They're cleaned up as much as I can get them. I'm probably going to buy new ones, but for now they're going to go back on the bike just so I can get rid of that bungee cord in the back. And so we're going to do the same thing with the other one, just wire wheel it, put it on, and eventually we'll replace them. All right, guys, you may have noticed earlier that I had the swing arm upside down. It's funny because I had it up there right to check it, and I had to take it down for a minute, put it back up there, and put it back upside down. But flipped it over. It's upright now. Got the shocks on it. Got the brake pedal just sitting there because it was missing this bolt. I will get a new bolt for that. So just trying to get everything kind of start putting things back on there. I got the brake light switch in place. So we're moving on along, getting things back on this. It'll probably be a little while before I'm back on this, so I don't know where I'll start back off again, but you know, we'll keep getting this thing put back together.